Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Megan Trezza. I'm the founder of La Jolla Learning Works, and I'm so happy to have Shannon Brady of Brady College Consulting here with us this afternoon to talk about what we're all very curious about, what's going on this fall with college admissions due to this crazy pandemic world we're in and all of the changes that it's thrown our way for school in particular. We are doing a lot of different things this fall, including virtual services and programs. And so I can tell you a little bit more about that at the end. If you have any questions about, one-on-one support for your kids this fall, or, test preparation, anything like that, we can answer questions. What we're going to be doing is Shannon and I will go through a little overview to start with. And then we're going to leave plenty of time at the end for your guys' questions. So just as a quick overview for everyone, now I kind of laugh when I do this because I feel like everyone now is very familiar with Zoom, but just so that you know, there is a chat box that you can open. You can go to the control panel at the bottom of your screen. If you hover on the bottom, it'll light up and you should see a little gray icon that says chat. If you don't see it immediately, you can click on more and you should just see a little line that says chat. So go ahead and open up that little chat, and as questions come up for you, feel free to just enter them there. And at the end, when we're jumping into questions, I'll just be peppering Shannon with the questions that come in from there. So with that, Shannon, I'll let you do a little brief introduction.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me and letting me be a part of sharing all of this great information. Hopefully we can kind of close some questions and give some people some answers of what seems to be some muddy waters to go through. So thank you. And yeah, just a little bit about myself. I do college and academic counseling. I've been, my 16th application season just finished this past year. So have been doing this for quite a while. As an independent counselor, and prior to that I was in a school setting for 5 years, and prior to that I did some work in career planning at on the university level. So I've always had my hand in the higher ed world, so to speak, and have really just been doing a lot more one-on-one virtual college counseling now, of course. So yeah, so happy to be here.
Well, we'll just, I guess to get started, I wanted to just ask you to kind of give us an overview of the landscape and, just what's going on as you see it, both from, kind of high school preparation side and just how has COVID changed things right now?
Yeah. So I think we all kind of experienced somewhat of an abrupt halt in, March and April when all of this was starting to go on, and a lot of confusion on the district levels of what to do as far as giving grades or giving pass fail to students. So it was a lot of angst, a lot of unknown of what was the right thing to do in efforts to, put the students in the best light, help the teachers kind of navigate this new online system that they were never, trained to maybe do. So I think, what we felt so much in the spring was really confusion, and just unknown of how what was being decided was going to trickle down now into college admissions for those who are juniors, seniors, kind of entering in that world. So what we're still experiencing is a lot of unknown, but we're getting a little more information from admissions as far as where they're going to go with all of the unknown, and as far as how they're going to look at students in the light that they're going to be presenting, and really make the most of what they can with what they have. So I think what I'm starting to feel is that while it's kind of, muddy waters and uncharted territory that we're going through, it's across the board. It's every student that's dealing with it. It's every high school, it's every college, and it doesn't make it easier, but to know that we're going through this kind of together, and no one's going to be penalized for things not having been done, or how, testing may or may not be happening. So I think the main thing, I have a lot to cover, but the one thing that I thought was really an important message, looking through a couple things, and I'll refer to them, but college admissions deans, they have this response to COVID-19. It's run through the care counts in crisis. It's through Harvard Grad School of Education, and they have a program called Turning the Tide. And originally it started with about 200 college admission deans, and now it's about 300 they have this collective statement that really is supposed to I would say, kind of pave the way a little bit this season of college admissions, and things to be aware of that maybe we've never had to be aware of before, how they're going to assess students. So the one thing that I feel I'm entering this season with is their number one foundation, which is self-care for students, and is to be gentle with themselves, which I thought was really interesting. I think so much of this is college admissions is a stressful period of time for parents and for students. And we're really hard on ourselves, generally speaking. So in this time of kind of the unknown, and with COVID and with distance learning, is to be gentle with themselves. And I thought that was just such a really powerful, light word, so I hope that that would be my message, is to know that, take a deep breath. You're gonna get through this, no matter how you're feeling. There's an answer to something, and there's someone that will help you. So I think that's what I'm kind of learning here too, as far as that self-care line goes. But really, it's all about being very transparent to college admissions. It's always been about that. We have the ability to, write these essays, explain anything that's happened during COVID that may have impacted a student negatively or even positively. And colleges are understanding what students have maybe not been able to take advantage of that they were planning to, right? So I think there's this movement that's happening, that admissions is understanding the world that the students are coming from, and taking that into consideration more so than ever before. So it's just, it's kind of entering a really interesting chapter, and knowing, kind of the right people to maybe talk with as far as admissions goes, or seeking out, questions to, people like ourselves, or high school counselors. So yes, it's ever changing, but yeah. So
there's something really reassuring to hear that, on the college level, they're saying they want to see an emphasis on self-care, and it seems very humanizing of the college admission.
Totally.
World, because like you said, I know it always is a time of intense stress, and people, kids and parents, getting wrapped up in that sense of competition for limited spots, and just worry with it being such a big transition, and a big change in a child and family's life. So that's very reassuring to hear.
I know, I liked that. And I liked that. And I'll send this to you so we can send it out to everybody on the call today. But it shows all 300 plus deans, the colleges that stand behind these 5 pillars, if you will. And it felt very humanizing. It felt empathetic. It just was like, wow, we understand that this is really crappy right now for you guys, and we're gonna do the best job we can to make sure that we can help you get through this. And our job as admissions counselors is to accept you. We want to accept you, right? So we're gonna do all we can to find the light that shines on you, that's going to potentially accept you. So whether they're blowing smoke or not, well, I liked what I read, and it felt good about that. So we'll go with that.
I'll let you just kind of dive into some more specifics then. Maybe we can start with academics, and what that's looking like for students, given I know we had springtime, pass fail classes, not getting letter grades in many cases. You have students, trying to take AP tests, and that was thrown off, and who knows what it's going to look like, or how long this pandemic's going to last, if we're going to be in another testing season next year. But yeah, just what is it as far as academics?
So this has been kind of across the board besides the response to COVID. But the admissions is going to assess the academic achievements based on your academic performance before and after this pandemic. So they are going to concentrate primarily on maybe what that first half of, we'll just kind of speak to the senior year audience, those entering senior year. They're going to be focusing on the fall semester of their junior year, and then kind of that spring semester that happened, or trimester, whatever it might have been, wherever that, window that we all left and went distance, it's almost going to be a little bit of a blur. And so admissions is not going to really know what to do with that. So they're going to kind of put that on the back burner for a lot of students. And they're going to focus on potentially what is going to happen this fall. Now, with the state of how things are for most high schools around here, not potentially going back initially, we might be in, we're going to be in a distance learning position, but grades for the most part are going to be given. So the assessment of fall senior year grades is going to be critical, as well as the classes, the rigor that a student might have as a senior is going to be really looked upon, as the student, where are they coming from? What resources did they have, whether that be the high school or wherever they are taking classes? What did they, what was available to them? What did they take advantage of, and how are they doing on that, trajectory? So ultimately, colleges are not, they're not expecting a student to have made the decision to go pass, fail, or grade. So like I said, I think for the most part, it was a decision made for most students. There may have been some students that had the choice to have grades or pass, fail. Their college is saying, admissions is saying, if you'd like to explain why you chose one or the other, you can, but we're not going to really ask why. So it's kind of, again, this open-ended wonder of how it's just going to almost, it's there, but it's not going to be really, the decisions aren't going to be made upon second semester junior year. So the way that I kind of have been looking at the academic side too is for students that felt like they got the pass fail, most of them obviously got into a passing area, that they were like, well, it really, my GPA was going to be so strong ending junior year, and I don't have any grades. And it's, it's to reiterate that they're going to potentially look at those senior year fall semester grades even more, but to consider looking at some online options in classes and academic classes that would give a letter grade. So a lot of the students I've been working with this summer did pursue that and looked into some options. So I would say if that's something that a student feels they have the ability to do, it could even be a rising sophomore or junior. The nice thing about an online class for many of them that are accredited is that students can do them at their own pace. So if they find a program like that they can manage that alongside what their high school schedule might be, that could be something that could at least add a little bit more academic value to their transcript / application when the time comes. So that could be one way to call it stand out, or just go a little bit above and beyond. I mean, even just taking a free online college course, like some of those programs out there that offer kind of, you can, sit into the college course and listen, and you don't necessarily get a grade, but those are ways to show you could be putting that on an activity resume, just ways that you, again, went outside the box to learn about a specific academic area or subject area that you may have not even had the chance to do if you were in school. So those are, a couple ways to maybe consider going above and beyond that. So that's, yeah.
So we offer courses for credit, and we offer them through a curriculum partner that does virtual curriculum. And our curriculum partner is accredited. So the courses, they count, they'll get a transcript through the curriculum partner. And I mean, we have AP courses, all sorts of things, but I oftentimes get parents asking, what if my high school doesn't accept these credits? Because a lot of the high schools have limitations on classes that students are allowed to take outside of that school. Some private, some public, just kind of across the board, that they have those issues. What's your advice to parents about that? Is
Yeah.
it more like just looking forward to the college application for this credit?
Absolutely. And that's a great point, is that a lot of them will do have those caps of how many off campus, so to speak, classes they can take. But think of it as you're creating an application, and the high school transcript is one piece, the activity resume is another piece. If you have a portfolio of some sort, or you have anything, tangible that's external that you're doing, such as an online class with another program accredited. Absolutely. So colleges are going, regardless of whether or not it's on their high school transcript, it's something as a student, when you're applying, you're going to be indicating that you did take that class, and they're going to see that. And oftentimes admissions is taking transcripts and manipulating GPAs anyway. They're recalculating, or they're pulling in any outside class that they're taking at a community college or accredited high school online. So, the message should be, don't worry if the high school is not going to put that on the transcript, but just be mindful that that goes on the application for admissions, and that a transcript can be sent, through the accredited program, and the college is going to give that, appropriate acknowledgement.
That's really great to hear.
Yeah.
And even I wasn't aware that colleges would recalculate GPA, including something like that. I knew that they sometimes had their own formulas with like AP and kind of like unweighting things, but that's
right. And that's
a positive direction too for students.
Yeah, definitely. And it depends. Not all not all colleges will recalculate the GPA, but they'll certainly pull that into the equation when they're assessing a student and ranking them, and kind of assessing their qualification for admission. So yeah, it's definitely going to add value.
Brownie points
for a student in their application. Yeah.
Okay. Which I'm sure makes a big difference. Like you said, if you have a portfolio or anything else that you're adding to it, it's an additional, point on top of everything else.
Right. It's just adding, just pulling from that tree and some students can't do those things, and so that's okay too. And it's a matter of being, again, transparent in your application of what you were capable of doing and what you weren't. All of that will kind of be seen. So it's not the be all end all. There's a lot of free things out there too to learn about a particular subject area, whether it's listening to podcasts or reading books, right? I was reading about the Tulane enrollment manager. He was saying, I hope that students are putting down on their activity resumes, or like listing under the additional info sections, like all the books maybe that they read, or the podcasts that they listened to, or just the series that they watched that was an educational kind of, like, he's like, I just want them to get creative on an academic level, even if it wasn't paying for a class, or taking a structured class. It's like, well, how did you educate yourself maybe in this time to just learn more? So I thought that was good advice too.
Yeah. And that can show a lot of initiative, where you have like the side of, some students may choose to do, less than what's required, and you're then going to have others that are doing more, and hopefully just following like passions and interests, and down those places that might lead them to something that they want to study or do in a career in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. That would be the goal, right? Is to learn more, so that way they have a clear path of decision-making ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what about extracurriculars? Especially thinking of high school athletes. I know that's one of your specialties too.
Yeah. I'd say, in the beginning of my practice, I worked with a lot of student athletes because I was one myself. And so I'd say over time, every year I probably average about 20% of the students are maybe pursuing athletics on a collegiate level. But I think the athletics is probably the biggest, well, I shouldn't say the biggest, but one of the most impacted areas for students that have had that involvement in what they're able to do on a recruitment level. Again, everyone is on the same kind of field right now, so to speak. No one's really getting recruited like they maybe were. However, a lot of recruitment for some other sports may have happened just as the shift of COVID was happening too. So some sports were kind of in an okay position, and a lot of club levels are at least practicing, and coaches can come and maybe see them. But I would say what I've noticed, and again, the expectation, like I wrote to, like I had written down about no student will be disadvantaged for not engaging in activities during this time. They're looking at work and family responsibility as even more valuable during this time. So I think they're realizing that the shift of extracurriculars is just not what it's going to normally look like in admissions this year, and that they're expecting to see a lot of students that had to maybe kind of jump on board and, you know, be the tutor for the younger sibling, or watch or help, you know, cook meals or whatever it may have been for that family. Those things should be identified for sure on the application about what kind of responsibilities they may have unnecessarily wanted to obtain, but had to based off of the circumstances. So family responsibilities, any work that the student may have had to also participate in is something that they're going to be looking at. But then I've seen some students, and I have a list of virtual internships too. So different internships that offer, you know, to high school students to get involved kind of on that virtual platform as well. So I've seen students get involved with that, which has been kind of cool. Some students just are thinking really outside the box and getting super creative on what they were doing and taking it to a, you know, a virtual level. And that kind of runs the gamut as far as what that might look like. But I'd say if it's something that you think you can do on a virtual platform, try it out. I mean, the worst that happens is it maybe doesn't work out, or not necessarily recreating new material on your activity resume, but thinking of what you've been really passionate and involved with throughout the past few years. And is there any way that you can kind of attach that to what's going on, whether it's physically or on that virtual level? You know, food banks are still very, they're still collecting so much for people in need. And so there are ways for students that if they have that involvement or that interest, if they wanted to, and really more related to COVID, they can get involved with the community, you know? So I think it's just thinking a little bit outside the box of what they maybe weren't planning to do. And the school clubs are, you know, maybe not going to be as active as they typically are for the fall, but, you know, hopefully things will change. And ultimately the sports season too, with that shift of when things are starting, is going to impact then if they have a second sport. So one tick at a time. I'm curious to see how this will all kind of play out. But again, colleges are watching it right alongside of us and understanding that students are going to have some pretty hard decisions as far as specifically athletics go, and what they may or may not be able to participate in the spring if there's an overlap of seasons, you know. So it will be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see, you know, when they can start up sports again too, you know.
I know.
I'm sure that'll impact things. So aside from what you've already mentioned in kind of, you know, each of these areas we've discussed, what more specifics do you have as far as how colleges are going to be handling admissions for students this year?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'd like to say is what I think is happening on many admissions or on college campuses, but just listening to a webinar this past week, the UC Santa Barbara enrollment manager, she spoke about how they are they're rolling out one-on-one or virtual information sessions live, so students can get onto the admissions websites and start to sign up for those alongside campus tours as well, where a student, an active or current student's actually walking around campus with, I'm assuming, a camera of some sort, and the student is basically right alongside them and able to ask questions or see kind of the real time campus, besides an edited video, which are still obviously great to see. But her goal in saying that wasn't about demonstrated interest, which is a big piece of admissions in my mind for many schools, not for the UCs, of course, because they don't watch demonstrated interest. But her sense of this creation, she thinks, overall, this is a really great way for students to learn about the schools that they may have on their list, and and, with not being able to go visit them, this is just going to be a way to really get some insight to help maybe form some of their essay writing that they'll have to do. So her whole goal was educating yourself on a college that you're interested in. It goes beyond just, reading about their programs. It's now going to be virtual tours and info sessions because of what we can or cannot do. So her whole goal was to really just say to students, make sure the colleges are on your list are really ones that you have invested a lot of time learning about, because it's going to be seen from the admissions is how much you really got to understand what their mission statement is and their programs are, and getting online and signing up for their mailing list so you can get all their information that they're either emailing or sending, and then reaching out to regional admissions reps at particular schools and introducing yourself and letting them know that you're planning to apply and you have an interest in this major school and this program, and asking questions. So this was always something that we could do, but this is going to be, in my opinion, a big difference from last year to this year and the years to come, is that the ability that we have to that we've always had, but we never really utilized it the way we can, right, is to connect with admissions quickly and readily. They're not traveling like they normally do, so they're going to be more available to us, to students, than they probably have ever been. And they've admitted that. They kind of are like looking forward to this like new fall where they can really be engaged with students. So as a student, I'd urge them to really reciprocate that. But if you haven't reciprocated that, meaning you're not on mailing lists and not getting information, be the one to reach out to that school, get on the admissions website, sign up for any webinars that they're doing for prospective students, watch their virtual tour, listen in on an info session, do all the things, because it really will make a difference on either does that college stay on your list? Maybe you saw something, you're like, I don't think that was a school I really wanted to apply to. Maybe it confirmed it, and then if it's confirmed it, then hopefully it will help when writing some supplemental essays for that particular school. So that was kind of a long-winded answer, but what else is admissions looking for? It's student interest, it's student curiosity. So this is the way we're going to be able to do that, is really tapping into technology and showing and telling them how we really feel about the school. And then in return, writing about it vividly and genuinely, I think is definitely something that they are going to be looking for. It's just how, is the student just throwing in an application because they've heard of us, or is it a student that's really invested some time in getting to know us a little bit, right? So other things with admissions, a lot of it, the testing, right, is kind of the big elephant in the room, that admissions has been kind of, has thrown their arms up like, oh, this is just, we're test optional, or we're test aware, and all the lingo that's happening now with testing. So I think that's probably, what we're going to encounter is probably the biggest change this fall, is how that's going to affect admissions. And ultimately, the way that we're hearing is, obviously we know that there's some tests potentially coming up. We don't know if those will happen. If they don't happen, a student wouldn't be penalized by not having it happen. But because a lot of these schools are we'll call it test optional or test aware, they're not necessarily test blind yet. So what that means is that there are some schools, and I'm sure this could potentially change in the upcoming years if things with testing kind of go south, but merit scholarships oftentimes do assess a test score when giving merit scholarship, not in every case, but in many cases for colleges out there. So they're potentially expecting to see that. Now, obviously, if they're not offered, then they can't expect to see that. But if a student is in the position where they can prepare for a test, I think that they should definitely try to do that. The issue stands is, well, how long do we prep for if they just continue to cancel and cancel and cancel, and we're spending money and we're spending time? What if, right? What if that test is offered? I think you then go into it so much more prepared than having just not known what was going to go on and stop the prepping. So I don't think the prepping needs to be, unless you're signed up for the September test date, more than it normally would be of what you would maybe schedule with your, test prep professional. But I think it's still something that if you can go for it, I would. Now, if you have a score from earlier in your junior year that you're okay with, that you're kind of hitting that 50 percentile for a college, I would probably say maybe step away. It might not be worth the time and energy to retest. But if you're, you're going to be a strong test taker based off of baselines and where you were projecting to maybe score, then I wouldn't lose hope completely. And maybe Megan, you can chime in a little because of you guys being able to test prep. I mean, what are you feeling as far as the tutors? What are they saying to their students and their goals with them?
I mean, at this point, I think it's kind of like what you're saying. We've had students that had been working with us for test preparation when all of this began. And, some of them chose to take a pause, but others just kind of chose to scale it back a little bit. Because like you said, once you kind of get your mind in that game, it's helpful to keep the momentum up. And there's really no drawback to having an extended test prep experience, at least the way that we do it, because it's not just like repetitive practice drills all the time. It's, focusing on new concepts and, learning new skills, practicing skills, broadening vocabulary, doing things, like working on writing skills that just kind of enrich as you practice them over time. So that's kind of where we've been with students. It was understandable if some wanted to take a break, and, we certainly didn't penalize them for that. But, we've had others that have engaged with us during this period of time to start working on, SAT or ACT prep. And I think that's the mentality is, it may be like a longer game of preparation, but that, they're hopeful that they'll get a test date, somewhere in the near future. And when that comes around, their child will be extra prepared.
Right. And this is a test that's still, this year will maybe be a little different, but when we look at the factors of college admissions and the strengths, is number one is rigor, number two is GPA, number three is test prep or testing. So the test prep, is a critical piece to this puzzle. And until there's no tests at all, meaning if there's nothing offered, then, they're still going to potentially put some value on that. So I think it's great that they can kind of keep that longevity of test prep. And I guess we'll just see what happens. I know a lot of students, when they were trying to register in the past week and all the trouble that they had with ACT, but a lot of students were able to register for the December ACT, and everyone's like, oh, I got December. And I was like, you know what, that's good. I feel a little safer with that than I even do with September's test date. And the reality is that, applying to at least to the UC system or Cal State system, they take tests through obviously December. But I think a lot of colleges now, depending on, in-state, out-of-state, and if you apply early or not, if you do have that test score, and you're liking what you get, that you submitted that even after your applications are in, because that could potentially help admissions if you didn't get your decision yet or you got deferred. So I don't think we should lose hope on it just yet. I think there's definitely, there's still light that these are all going to happen and it's going to be okay. But I know it's muddy to say the least. So I think the UCs, are kind of making a pretty big stand on the testing overall. And I think that could steer admissions for other institutions differently in the upcoming years. But for now, I think a lot of them are kind of staying in their lane and making decisions based off of their, own institution, and not being clouded too much about what the UCs are going to do as far as kind of creating their own test or whatever they're saying in a couple of years. So that will be interesting.
Yeah, I was curious what you thought about that. Does that mean then that, the GPA and these other aspects are going to weigh higher, or have they said, what their formula is going to look like for admissions without testing?
Yeah, well, yes. Ultimately, it was a good dialogue with the UC Santa Barbara provost. She said that if a student submits a test score and it reflects pretty much in line with what they've submitted as far as their transcript goes, then they'll utilize it. They'll put it as part of one of the factors in the holistic review. But if a student doesn't take it, they didn't have the means to take it, they couldn't take it, they won't, they'll be looking at the other factors. They'll kind of even out the percentage of how they look at the factors without the test scores in there. But then if a student submits test scores that, again, she was saying her goal is to accept students. So if they submitted something from, the early part of of their junior year, and it wasn't very reflective of what their profile was, that they would remove it. They would just take it away, and they would calculate the student profile without the test score. So they were, again, kind of she was making a pretty big stance on, we're going to look at the information that's going to provide the best light on the student. So with or without a test score, even with the test score and kind of pulling that away, they're going to be doing things like that. So we'll see, how that transpires, especially the UC system and the students and the deferrals, and how that could potentially play a role into how many students they can accept for next year. Is that going to affect the incoming freshmen? Is it not? Are they going to over-enroll purposely because of how things may be, and they don't know if those deferred students are going to come back? I mean, there's a lot of question marks of those deferrals, right? Because even though they're telling the college, we'll be back next fall, I mean, they're taking a chance, and that student might not come back, right? So then that's a whole nother thing.
I guess it's important to remember that the colleges are facing hardships because of this too. They want to have their student body, coming back to campus eventually. They want to have their student body full in these future classes too.
Right. It's money. It's, money signs for them. It's enrollment sign. The enrollment down is not good for many colleges and their, and their endowments and what they're able to afford to pull out and what they can't. And so it will be interesting to see how they navigate those waters. And I'd like to hope and think, maybe because I'm hopeful and I'm trying to look at this and like the half full, glass is half full, is maybe they'll over enroll next year. And I'm like, I don't know why I feel like that's something they do, but I just think financially that might be wise, and they could spill students over into off-campus housing or whatever they need to do. But to me, I think admissions is going to probably think long and hard about how to get these numbers back that they're losing this year, without cutting all the faculty or programs. And I mean, and so many are already being cut, athletics and all of, a lot of clubs and things that were, I mean, I think Stanford cut, what was it, like 6 or 8 athletic teams.
Wow.
Coaches, were all eliminated from the program.
Wow.
So I think things like that might start to, happen. I mean, and that's an institution that has an endowment that's, higher than most. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we covered so much, but I'm sure there are still some questions that we did not address. So I do want to leave some time here and open it up to our participants. If you joined us late, I know there were some people that were popping in here as we've been talking. You can use your chat feature to add any questions that you'd like Shannon to address or myself. And if you are not familiar with it, your chat feature you can find at the bottom of your screen. If you just hover over, you'll see a little bar that pops up that has some little gray icons, and one of them should say chat. And if it's not showing, because maybe you shrunk your screen like I did, then you can click on the 3 dots and it'll open up an option where you'll see chat. So just click on that and add your questions there too.
The one thing I wanted to mention too, Megan, while we're waiting for some questions, there's a company called Social Assurity. It's an online course in social media and college admissions. And they offer a course for students to kind of build on any social media that they already have created, or kind of the do's and the don'ts, if you will, creating a LinkedIn profile page if a student was up for that and had some experience that they wanted to share. But college admissions are, they're going to have to learn remotely as well about students. So they're already tapping into social media. So I'll be sure to include that in kind of our recap, the link for information on that. They offer a few chapters free, and then there is a fee associated, I believe, with their course, but it might be might be worth looking into for students who are looking to, again, expand on that area of their profile.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. And
Yeah.
send it over, and we're going to follow up with everybody with an email. We'll give them these
Yeah,
options and resources. We do have some questions coming in, so I'm going to start scrolling through these. The first one is about the recommended number of schools for students to apply to. I know that's always a big question around admissions, but this parent in particular is curious if it's the same or different than previous years. Do you have a recommended number?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I've kind of always gone on this, the lower end 6 to 8, the middle range 8 to 10, and the higher range 10 to 12, 10 to 15, depending on the student's major. So does this year change things? Potentially. I think depending on the type of student, so the type of profile that the student has academically, extracurricularly, and the types of colleges that they're maybe looking to apply to, choosing that college list appropriately, so there's a good spread of schools that are not only, good bet or match schools, not too many reach schools. So if the schools that they're applying to are extremely selective, then that college list is typically higher anyway. So I would probably err on the higher side. But if a student is creating a college list that's well balanced, they really shouldn't be doing more than 10. I think 10 is probably a good number for most years, and I think this year, 10 to 12 could be appropriate too.
Okay, great, good to know.
Yeah.
And I have a question here about a passion project, which we didn't touch on, but I know you kind of alluded to some of that with, like, getting creative online and tapping into interests. This parent says she has a rising sophomore who doesn't know her passion yet. And she's just curious, is this a time when a student should know their passion? And is that what colleges are looking for? And I guess I'm curious too, how much more that play into the equation with the changes in admissions now due to COVID.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because it's something that I think some students feel like they have that path laid very clearly for them. They know from an early age of maybe something they're passionate about or not. And I would say for students that are, in going into 10th grade, this is the time to maybe think about what they've been involved with or what they like to do, whether it's areas of academic areas they like to learn about, where they're strong, what academic areas are they strong in? Have they taken any type of personality assessment yet, or, like a Myers-Briggs, or have they explored their own personality to maybe get some guidance of just, more generally speaking, as far as personality types can sometimes pull in some ideas of what, you like to work with people, you don't, depending if you're extroverted or introverted, or you're sensing versus feeling. So I think sometimes, looking into programs like that, there's a program that I've been using with students called U Science. I believe actually just changed names, but it's a career personality assessment aptitude test that kind of shows students what those values that they have are, how they line up with maybe some careers, or what their strengths would be as, in personality type. So that's one way to do it if you want to kind of actively figure that out. But I don't think it needs to be pushed either. I think many colleges aren't expecting students to come in knowing what they want to do. I'd say over half the students that I work with apply undecided, and that's completely okay. So coming in completely undecided is fine, but coming in with some idea of what you may like to do, or an interest, I think is what would be ideal, if anything. So
cool. Yeah, and that's how we do our career exploration program, which kind of leans in the same direction of just helping students explore their own interests, and then understanding how their strengths and their interests align with different potential career paths. So that might give them an idea of something that they might want to explore. And it can be helpful for students that want to look into internships, but they don't know what they want to do an internship in. So, to start with, okay, let's explore, what's something interesting that matches with my personality. Along those lines, someone's curious about, you're mentioning about applying with an undecided major. And is that something that can be a disadvantage? And, is is it advantageous for a student, say, to just pick like the closest thing they might like if they, you know, can nail that down, even if they think they're probably going to switch when they get there?
Yeah, I think it depends on the college. So that's a question that, depending on the schools that are on that list that they're applying to, would typically help in answering that. Some schools you have to apply into a particular, or some colleges you have to apply into a particular school of arts and sciences, a school of business. So some schools may or may not be a little more selective than another. So you could be undecided in a particular school, or you could be undecided overall. It really depends on the school, though. So it's not necessarily at a disadvantage to go in undecided, but you have to kind of understand what the admissions is like at that, not only college or institution as a whole, but then the specific schools, if it's a larger school, how they accept. Some schools are accepting students and then they kind of disperse the students. Some colleges are accepting students in a particular school and filling seats that way. So it's hard to kind of answer that on a very general, but ultimately, I would say most students are not at a disadvantage to be undecided.
Okay, that makes sense. And I know like for like a UCSD, it's always been important, like what school you're applying to, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
Right.
where I went at UC Berkeley, it didn't matter. We came in undeclared and it was no big deal.
Right. So yeah, so different strokes. Yeah.
So we have another question here about when students should start reaching out to the regional admissions reps and doing the virtual tours like you were talking about. Is it junior, senior
Yeah.
year? What's the timeline for that?
Definitely senior year. It can happen junior year too, but just keep in mind that I would probably give most regional reps the time between now and November is they're really focused on seniors, because they're recruiting them, they're reading their applications, they're getting to know them. You can certainly reach out to them as a junior, but as far as more of that interactive, relationship, I would maybe wait till the spring of your junior year, winter, spring of junior year. The virtual tours, though, I mean, those can happen as early as ninth grade. So there's no, bad time to start, really. I mean, the more you start to do as a younger student, the more information you have coming in as a senior, right? So the more you're learning about how admissions works, about particular colleges, how a particular curriculum works, the more you're going to be ready to explore that, or know what other colleges that you're going to want to look at, what they have. You're going to seek that out, and you're going to know quickly your preferences. And I think by doing those virtual tours early on, you'll know that.
I love that they're doing the virtual tours too. It's a big equalizer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All over the place, or didn't have parents who could take time off to take them on tours and stuff. That's pretty cool. Excuse my cats.
Yeah.
I have a question, pretty specific one about SAT scores. So this one is, I'll read it verbatim here. For colleges like Georgetown that used to not have score choice and required you to send in all SAT scores that you got, but are test optional this year, does that mean that you no longer have to send in all SAT scores that you received?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, based off of how things were versus now, I would imagine that if you've taken anything and you're submitting something to Georgetown, then they're going to want it all. But I can clarify with them. I'm not totally sure. I haven't read the language for this year, because there's going to be some students that won't submit anything. So that'd be interesting to see if they kind of change, right. So yeah, used to not have score choice, required you send in all. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say that if you're intending to send scores to Georgetown, that you're going to potentially send them all in like you would in years prior, or you're going to go with their test optional procedure and not send tests at all. So I would say it's going to be one or the other, but I can find out more specifically and get back on more of a clear answer
that information later. It sounds like, just from what you were saying, I'm not sure if Georgetown is one of the schools on your list of the 300 deans, but it sounds like from what you were saying earlier that there's just going to be a little more grace given around everything. So like you said, if the score isn't adding to the student's admissions profile, they wouldn't necessarily use it to give that student more of a disadvantage.
Right. That is the message that they're giving. I'm just looking up now to see if, interestingly, I don't see, I don't think Georgetown was one of the 300. So, yeah, I don't see them on here.
Well, if you come across more specific information, we can certainly follow
Yeah,
up.
I will. I'll definitely find that out. Yeah.
Great.
Georgetown. Yeah.
Well, that looks like, I don't know if anybody else wants to throw in some last minute questions. We have a couple extra minutes here. But you really have done a fabulous job, Shannon, of covering everything. And just, being in a position, where we do see a lot of students, at this usually very stressful time, and knowing now it's even, more crazy with all the uncertainty, I feel more at ease about it. And I feel like, if students are in a position to do a little something extra, it almost feels like there's like less pressure, where it used to be, you had to do the clubs and you had to do the sports and you had to have all this and that. And now, we can't do that all. So do the best you can, seems like the message.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm hearing, which I hope that really kind of we can maintain a little bit of that, right, for the future too. I think there is something kind of calming about that, but the unknown is still the unknown, and I think that's what's so scary about this, is just like, well, what's going to happen, right? Like, is it going to be harder? Is it going to be easy? Like, all the things. So I think that's what gives us the angst in any of this, right? But I think the answers are out there, and they're gonna get more clear as time goes by.
That's awesome. Well, I have somebody who has asked about your email address, and we'll share that out in a follow-up email to everybody. You can let us know what contact number and an email address you'd like to share, and we'll make sure everybody can get in touch with you. And then
good.
You have some things. I'm just going to see if I can make this work as a screen share here. Let's see real quick. If you want to tell us about your
so it's ironic, but I've always wanted to kind of roll out a virtual program. I think I even talked to you about this, Megan, like, probably 8 months ago when we met for lunch. But I have found that, students are so busy. And I was like, I think going forward at some point in my career, I'd like to just make something that's very compatible, and students can do it anywhere, and I could do it with any student, and I don't have to be physically with them. So, with the times came my official rollout of more of a virtual program. And this is really geared towards a rising senior that's, maybe has their college list, has a lot of the bones in place, and they're just kind of looking for someone to come in and really do some fine tuning with essays and applications, and have, some face-to-face time to get through some questions and concerns that they might have. So the virtual essay brainstorming application review program is just that. So I have some more detail too, if people are interested, that kind of walks through step by step on how each of those bullets look. But yeah, it's a great way to kind of get a lot done. So that's for this year's class. And then going forward, I'm actually working on a course, an online course. It won't be available probably till the spring, but it's going to be really awesome. It's going to be a great way for students to access me, but get college counseling. It's going to be affordable, and it's going to be a way to feel like they have someone to kind of help them through the process. So that's coming down the line, but I'm starting here first, and seeing how this goes.
Well, this crazy pandemic state of the world has forced a lot of us to adapt and become innovative. So I applaud
That's right.
doing that. And that's really exciting that you'll have a course where it will be a little bit more accessible to students, and sounds like
I'm excited.
Really for them to help. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to everyone for joining us. And like I said, we will follow up with an email to everyone that will include a recording from this conversation that we've had here this afternoon, in case you joined us late, or in case you have somebody you want to share it with who wasn't here today. So we'll also include Shannon's contact information, how you can find her, and the details about her virtual essay brainstorming and application review program. So thank you so much for your time, Shannon. I appreciate you sharing all this
Oh, thanks,
information.
Megan. Yeah, thanks for having me anytime.
All right. Well, everybody take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay in touch.